Plugged into the internet is causing my problems. So, I probably should put this at the beginning of the video. So, to insert in the part about Brigham Young and his atonement, has to do also with tithing. And the scripture in the Doctrine and Covenants on tithing, which was put in by Brigham Young, not Joseph Smith, even though he framed Joseph for it. You can tell because it's dated to 1838. This was the period of time before Joseph Smith was falsely accused and locked up in Liberty Jail because of the election fraud and Mormon war of the Danites, where Brigham Young cooed the church and became the president of the 12 during this chaos. And so, yeah, that needs to be understood. So tithing was put in 1844 in Brigham Young's first change of the Doctrine and Covenants. And because he attached it to Joseph Smith, everybody fell for it. Said, oh, I guess he wrote, okay, then yeah, great. Thank you so much, Brigham Young. Now that he's been murdered by unknown persons because the mob was acquitted, thank you for sharing us the words of Joseph Smith. What do you mean we got to pay tithing in order to enter the temple? Is that what Joseph said? Oh, all right. Yeah, that's what he was doing. He was trying to make more money off the Mormons, because Joseph's economic systems was first sabotaged by the Danites, which caused the failure of the bank, and got him 17 counts of bank fraud that he was able to get away with, and thus the Mormon war with the election fraud to frame Joseph for seditious conspiracy, and got the Mormon extermination order as a result of it, because it was Orrin Porter Rockwell ordered by Brigham Young to cause the assassination, not by Joseph Smith. And so tithing is 1/10 of your interest annually, as Brigham Young put it. And this is only for if you have your own business. Because if you work for someone else, you don't get interest. You get wage. And it specifically states 10% of your interest annually. So only those who own and run their own business. If you are a slave, you don't pay tithing. You're supposed to be set free. But not Brigham's church. Brigham had slaves and had human trafficking, not just sex trafficking. And so this was his atonement, is that in order to be worthy, you had to pay up. And so, yes, over the course of time, it's been changed to wages. So, yes, Mormon slaves also have to pay the atonement money back to Jesus, when Jesus' atonement is supposed to be free. Nope, not anymore. Not in the Mormon church, under Brigham Young. It's now a protection racket. You have to pay the ransom. You have to pay reparations back to Jesus. This is atonement money. And as much as you argue and complain and you say, I willingly give the money to the church, I donate it, it's not a donation. When you are forced to pay, it's not a donation. If you get punished for not being a full tithe payer, it's not a donation. James Huntsman blew it. He was the perfect opportunity to destroy the church, and he blew it because he called it a donation. I even emailed his lawyers. It's not a donation. Make that clear in court. They didn't listen to me. I put it in my own filings. So it is public knowledge, but they didn't do anything about it. Federal government is covering for the church. But the SEC got them. But we're still waiting on the IRS. So, yeah, that was how Brigham Young set up his perpetual immigration fund. Mormons paid into it, forced to pay into it, and then that money was used to bring the saints from all over the world, which was Europe and eastern states, to Salt Lake Valley, and then they had to pay it back. They weren't going to get here for free. And then once they paid it back, Brigham Young gave them citizenship. Oops! Can't do that, Brigham. Naughty, naughty. That's a crime. And so the United States shut down the church for their perpetual immigration fund in 1887. And everybody, especially the church, wants to say it was a violation of their religious freedom to practice polygamy. No. Grover Cleveland only pardoned you for polygamy. Didn't pardon you for your financial crimes that you continued to do to this day. The federal government still won't listen. So, on with the rest of the video. That's better. Travis Wayne Goodsell having some technical difficulties with this updated camera. So, in the comment reply video I did earlier, I brought up a comment asking about the differences between Joseph Smith's concept of the atonement versus Brigham Young's concept of the atonement. And I knew that this was going to be a separate video. And so we're going to go over it. So, I think the easiest thing to discuss first is the wrong one of Brigham Young's. His is the Christian variation, in which Jesus Christ is literal history real, despite having been created by Constantine 325 CE, and given the nature and character as not real. That's the word he created to solve the argument that the bishops were having. Everybody was disagreeing, and they chose to have Jesus as the name rather than Hercules, Perseus, Samson, Moses, Emmanuel, etc., etc., etc. Even Horus. They chose Jesus instead. And so, thus, you see problems in the book of Matthew, for example. You know, they give the prophecy that his name's supposed to be Emmanuel, but then says his name's Jesus. They named him Jesus because of the prophecy that his name's supposed to be Emmanuel. So they name him Jesus. So yeah, there's some problems if you're going to call this literal history and not a learning of the Jews, manner of prophecy, book of Revelation for the latter days. That's what you need to understand with learning of the Jews. And so, therefore, Jesus Christ lived during the Roman period time for the sole purpose of failing to save the Jews, despite that's what his name means, Yah of salvation. Yah is the Hebrew God, salvation. And thus is also part of the number 7, Shua, Sabbath. And I'd have to explain Paleo-Hebrew for you to fully explain that, but we'll get into some of that anyway for the learning of the Jews, because that's required here. But the Christians don't care anything about the Hebrew. And so he comes and tells people, and you need to know the difference between Nelson's concept of atonement versus Brigham Young's. Brigham Young stuck with Christian. Nelson has added a higher law of Jesus to the atonement. There is no such thing. Nelson is trying to push for polygamy. That's why he's doing what he's doing. Because in the highest degree of celestial kingdom, the higher law is only for those who are polygamous, as Brigham Young had framed Joseph Smith with section 132, replacing his monogamous scriptures, taking out the plain and precious truths. And so then he rides triumphant into Jerusalem after his ministry of 3.5 years. And it's still in Passover. So it's 3 years, not 3.5. But nonetheless, there's some issues if you're going to call this literal history. But nonetheless, Palm Sunday, he comes riding in triumphant. Everybody cheers. You are our king. Yay, we're saved. And then by the end of the week, burn the witch. Hang him. Get a rope. Yeah, that's part of the confusion. And so right before he is arrested, having been betrayed by Judas, despite their phonetically being the same and having to do with Mormons of the latter days, according to Joseph Smith's atonement, which we'll get to. He bleeds from every pore in Gethsemane, as the painting shows that Lucifer was there, laughing and mocking him in a tree, just like Catholics see the Virgin Mary or Jesus carved into a tree. Yeah, painter pulled that stunt for Mormons, as Mormons now see Lucifer in the tree, and others who are not wanting Lucifer because it's not faith promoting, then put the Holy Ghost in there instead, or whatever nonsense. It's a painting. Cut it out. That's not what he looks like. It's just a painting. Artists, they're so good at their work. And that needs to be the picture in the thumbnail, doesn't it? Let me write this down somewhere. Jesus Atonement. Okay. Pick. And yeah, we got to do Claire Crosby's song. So cute. Gethsemane. Christian's lover will convert her to Christianity and steal her away from the Mormon church. Of course, Nelson already groomed her to be Mormon with his Christmas singing special. You do know he's going to have 11-year-old girls be part of child brides in the Millennial Kingdom next year, starting 8 April 2024. You do know this. You're not shocked and horrified or in denial. No, he would never do that. He's already grooming his bride. Because I think she'll be 11 years old next year, won't she? Just sad. So, Yeah, that was the atonement. He bled from every pore to atone for Mormons. I mean, for all mankind. Let's exit out of this. See if we can stop the computer issues with the attacks by the YouTube employee. Apparently, the YouTube employee is demonstrating he's not working today. So what's up with that? It's a good day to make videos, I guess. And so, yeah, then the Mount of Transfiguration, where he gets the keys of Moses to be the president of the church, the seer, Peter, an Egyptian, and Peter's sleeping instead. He keeps betraying the Christ. That's strange. The seer betrays the Christ. Just like Caiaphas, who's the president of the church, betrays the Christ, wants him murdered. I'm sure it's literal history and not real prophecy for the latter days. And so, yeah, then he's crucified on the cross, and it has no symbolic significance to the latter days because we have to change history that the Romans now crucified on crosses rather than poles to fix the history with the Bible. Please hurry up and destroy Christianity. But I wish you would do it through education rather than murder. Because there's some atoning to it too. And so, yeah, then the tomb, and then resurrected. Then he tells Mary, his wife, "Don't touch me yet. We have not been sealed in the temple of Jesus in Zion of the latter days. Then we can have sex. I have not yet ascended to the throne." Oh, am I mixing my religions? Oops. So you're probably confused. Yeah. He ascends. Nelson never says Jesus ascends. Did you notice that? I've made sure you noticed that, but you have to watch my videos to know that I've made you notice. So yeah, go back over Nelson's talks, all of them. When he talks about Jesus, he'll say the resurrected Jesus. Jesus is resurrected. Never, ever, 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 ever does he say that Jesus has ascended. Huh. Interesting. And so, yeah, it's being deleted from the manuals. Jesus has never ascended in Mormon theology for the atonement. So, I guess he's not God, because he didn't ascend. Too bad. But that's Christian Mormon interpretation. Because Christians believe in the ascension. They have a holy day set aside for the ascension. Even for the ascension of Mary. They have one for that too. But not Nelson Mormons. Nope. Not at all. Okay? So that's pretty much it. You have to believe in Jesus in order to be saved. Faith without works, you're good to go, rather than dead. From James, Christians know their scriptures. Why don't Mormons know their scriptures? You should know this scripture. It's a scripture mastery. You were forced to memorize it. should know it. And then you should be able to apply it to the concept that you're using of read, ponder, pray, get a spiritual feeling, now you have knowledge. Oops, that's in violation of faith without works is dead. By their fruits you shall know them. Because this has to do with the atonement under the learning of the Jews. Thus, why Christianity is so abominable, because they're covering all this up. And Nelson's just exacerbating the abomination. And so, yeah, the translation clips that I gave you, he's not a true translator. He has failed you. And so he's exposed himself as the false prophet prophesied by John the Revelator. Huh. Isn't that interesting? So he's like Caiaphas, who wants to murder the Christ of Mormons? Yep, sure does. I've got the receipts. So the Jewish learning. There is no Jesus. There is a man like Moses from Deuteronomy 18:15 through 19. This is Joseph Smith's Christ. He says it is in verse 40 of the second vision. That's why it's Nephi and not Moroni. That's why Nephi calls himself Malachi and quotes Revelation for the latter days from Malachi and talking about the God Yah, Elijah, and is described as Emmanuel, the sun at noonday, from the Egyptians. Joseph Smith is trying to teach you something. You cannot take him literally. The church wants to take him literally so that you are deceived. And so, Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement for the Jews. This is the concept of the atonement and where it originated from. And yeah, it was from the Egyptians. But it is on the 10th day of the first civil month. It is on the 10th day of the 7th religious month. And because atonement is religious, not civil, it technically belongs with the 7th month. And so there's some little Hebraisms that you need to know in order to understand this fully. Because Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, Kippur, in Paleo-Hebrew, is the papyrus symbol and the fruit, the word for fruit. And it, Aramaic script is different from Paleo-Hebrew script. And since I've already started with Paleo-Hebrew, we'll continue. It's a person holding a sacred stand where you put an idol of a deity on top of it as part of the parade. Thus it's a sacred stand, because the sacred emblems or symbols of deity are put on top of it. And then you have Resh, which is the flag symbol, similar to the stand, because flags are carried also in processions and ceremonial parades. leading to the temple. And so, yes, it's an ensign to the nations. It's the flag symbol. It's the title of liberty. It represents God in Egyptian. And so they are associated with God, but it's fruit in translation. And so it's the writing of the fruit. Well, that seems weird. Writing fruit? I know painting fruit is a popular art thing to do, but no, it has to do with recording the number of fruit that is gathered at harvest. Now we're seeing why it's the 7th month in the September to October time. Now you're seeing what the atonement has to do. As the judgment of the Egyptians, those who pass their judgment are counted, having their names written in the book of life for the afterlife. And so by their fruits you shall know false prophets as well as true prophets. Faith without fruit is dead. Seed without fruit is dead. Faith without works is dead. Spiritual witness without physical manifestation is dead. And so that's what atonement refers to. It's the gathering of Israel. Moses, his keys for the presidency of Joseph Smith's church. Peter for Brigham Young's church. Didn't know that? Yeah, they never refer to Moses' keys. They refer to Elijah because of the temple work. Got to pay your tithing. But, yeah. And so that's Yom Kippur and the meaning of atonement. Yes, it has to do with a man like Moses of the latter days. He will save those who hearken to him. That's what Joseph Smith warns. That's what all the prophecies warn. He's not going to be doing some supernatural feats and doing all the work for you so that all you have to do is follow him. Yay! He paid my rent for the month. I'll follow you. That ain't going to happen. He's going to warn you about an economic collapse. Apparently that's on the news in Canada now. The countdown to America's economic failure. It's hilarious. Hilarious. And so it's interesting about the month of Tishri, which is associated with 10. Because they have the same root word, shri, shrew, sar, which, anybody remember the video of Nelson botching the translation of Israel? Did you watch the video where I explained it? No, you're busy rushing to the shortened version of just Nelson botching translations. It's very popular, I noticed. Apparently the Mormon employee is not working today. Oops. It's on a Tuesday. And so, yeah, that's Prince. And who's the Prince? Yeah, he's the Christ of the Jews, the man like Moses. He is Solomon, the son of King David, the Prince of Peace. And he becomes the King of Peace when he succeeds and takes back the throne, restoring it for his father, which goes to the Egyptian version of Horus, returning to Egypt to restore the throne of his father, who was murdered by his uncle Set. And on the first day of the latter days, a total solar eclipse over the United States of America, to show when the latter days is and where the latter days are. So they're not Egyptian, it is not Egypt, and it is not Jerusalem. It is not the Vatican. It is America. And the Great and Abominable Church is in America, and it is the American religion. And there's really only two. One of them happens to be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Great and Abominable Church. Not a coincidence. And so, 10, the number, has the universal symbol of the sun before Prince, whereas the name 10th month has the cross in Paleo-Hebrew. It's the same thing. See, the sun is Emmanuel, the sun at noonday. That is the Christ of the Jews. That's why David, when formed together in Paleo-Hebrew, is the Star of David. And the circle, yeah, that's Emmanuel, the descendant of David, to restore the throne. Thus the restoring Christ, Emmanuel. That's what the ring means. And so the sun, it identifies the date and the location with solar eclipses. And it forms a cross over the United States of America for the first and last days of darkness. And thus the T, the Tau, or it's Tau also in Greek, for Paleo-Hebrew, because they're letting us know through the letters of the alphabet about the latter days. And the Alpha, Aleph, in Babylonian Semitic Hebrew, is specifically shaped not only as the Wadjet Eye of Horus in linear script form, but also for the 3 days of darkness of solar eclipses over the United States of America. Day 2 is on the 14th of October 2023 and passes over Utah. See, the first one on the 21st of August 2017 passed over Independence, Missouri and Atonement, the Danite headquarters. Shh, it's a secret. They don't want you to know. Otherwise, they'll send you a death threat and want to kill you. And then the final one on 8 April 2024, which crosses over both of them. And interestingly, the cross for this one in this year is but at Travis County. Hilarious. Travis means he who is from the crossroads. These are the crossroads of the latter days, the cross of Christ. Isn't that interesting? If only my last name was Sun God, I might be the Christ prophesied by Joseph Smith. Huh. Nah. Mormons don't believe. And so, this is what they're teaching you with their calendar in Paleo-Hebrew, not Babylonian Semitic. Is that the sun is going to cast a cross for the latter days of the prince who will restore the throne. All right there in the vocabulary for the Day of Atonement. Whoops, wrong page. All right. And so, yeah, it's associated with Sabbath as the Sabbath of Sabbath. And so Jesus, when he says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath, and I've gone over that with you, Sabbath has to do with seventh. Excuse me. And so that's just a matter of switching the T and the cross and the universal symbol of the sun at the end of the word rather than at the beginning. Sabbath has the T at the end, obviously. And so 7, Saboa, has the universal symbol of the sun at the end. And that's why Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath, and why it's the atonement is associated with the Sabbath, because it has to do with the latter days. Doesn't have to do with the paranoia of working on the Sabbath and getting struck by lightning by Jesus. Okay, so the 10 days from the New Year, Rosh Hashanah, to Yom Kippur correspond to the last 10 days of the 40-day period Moses was on Mount Sinai. Receiving the second set of tablets. The second coming. No, it's the first coming of the one who will restore Moses' church. David, the David-Moses dynasty of Egypt, the 18th, Tawut Moseh. And so the top of the mountain, Utah. That's the definition of Utah. And it's phonetically the same as Judah, the betrayer of the Christ. Joseph in Genesis, Jesus in the Gospels, as they're wrongly called. Not necessarily, though, because the definition of gospel means God's tale. So it's incorrectly called the good news, because they're saying it's another testament of Jesus. But Sinai is fun in Paleo-Hebrew, because the N means king. If it's a person, and if it's a place, it's kingdom. And so Samson, sun king. That's why we know of the 3 days of darkness, where and when they will occur, because he gives us those. And we just had Samson with the burning of the foxtails, lighting the land of the Philistines on fire. Now the Philistines are going to be angry and murder his wife. 14 October 2023. Burn her. That's how they murdered her. So yeah, Fox News and my brother were part of that fulfillment. The two foxes, hilarious. And so, yeah, I mean, this is awesome, guys, because I see the fulfillment of prophecy. We're in the final year of the latter days. It's all been fulfilled so far. This is awesome. And you don't believe. So I'm only awesome to myself. And so, let's see. Mount Sinai. Where are you? Where are you? There it is. The S is not the same as the S in Prince or Israel. Let God prevail. No, Nelson. Oh my God, no. Not the white supremacist version. Because they replaced the Jews. So frustrating. Prince is Tsar in Israel. God. There's a basic thing. Unless you're a white supremacist. No, this is the Osiris symbol. Yeah. See, when Osiris was first murdered, he was nailed in a coffin with 9-inch nails, set afloat up the Nile River. This was by his brother Set. And so King Set, Satan, he lands at the Babel, where the Tower of Babel was, not Ur of Babylon. Wrong. This was Beirut, Lebanon. This is Babel. And so the king of Babel came to the beach and saw that the coffin had turned into a tree, a cedar of Lebanon. And he carved the tree into the Dej pillar of Osiris, the symbol. And so it's technically a tree symbol, and that is the symbol of Osiris. And so when you go to Ezekiel chapter 17, you learn of the prophecy of the Mormon Christ being a descendant of Osiris, because he's a branch taken from the top twigs and carried by an eagle to America. And thus we know that it was the San Francisco area where he is born, and Oakland, with the oak trees and the redwoods, where his nativity is. Then the prophecy continues and says he's going to move to Michigan, where there's many great waters and willow trees. Oh, the grove that Joseph Smith was in and meets Emmanuel, father and son Emmanuel, huh? There by the Great Lakes, grove of trees. Yes, Joseph is trying to teach you something too, prophesying, you might say, that Emmanuel will live there, just like Joseph did, but Michigan, the hand. And then, yeah, he'll be at the top of the mountains for 23rd September 2017, the birth of the latter days. He's going to be in Judah, Utah. Warning Mormons, come out of the great and abominable church, or they will destroy you. You might say, burn you with fire. So who wants to be Mormon still? I belong to the church of great and abominable Jesus. of Latter-day Saints. I don't know who I am, I just follow what I'm told. I'm a sheeple in every way. Now, your choice. If you're gonna be upset, claim I'm of the devil, don't like my tone, it's your fault. It's the message you're supposed to listen to. And so, yeah, it's the kingdom of Osiris, the mount of the kingdom of Osiris, who was dead, murdered by his brother. It's Judah, Utah. Hello. Seeing the pattern here? Seeing how prophecies are interpreted? Because of Joseph Smith saying he's going to be a Mormon. And so this is the atonement. It really doesn't have anything to do with the precise day. It's the symbol behind the words. Because the latter days are a period of 8 years, 2017 to 2024. 8 April 2024 is the final day. That's supposed to be the start of the millennium. And so this is the final year when all hell is going to break loose. Oh, and there's the heavenly books. Let's see. According to Jewish tradition, God inscribes each person's fate for the coming year into a book, the Book of Life. Yeah, they've kind of missed the point. This is the counting of the fruit, the latter days, the judgment. This is the atonement, when you are saved from the great and abominable church. If you hearken. If you don't hearken, you're not going to be saved. And then you won't believe in Jesus anymore, but you won't know who to turn to for religion, because you've been destroyed. And so, yeah, you got to confess your guilt. I thought of murdering Travis for criticizing the church. So can I come into Zion now? No! Get out! Hilarious. Okay. And so, yeah, there's the tradition that has crept in over the time, and people have added and taken away from what it originally means. But I gave you the origin and the actual meaning for you. And so, yeah, the whole concept of fasting and no eating and drinking, no wearing of leather shoes, no tennis shoes, sorry guys, no bathing or washing, oh please no. No anointing. Can't become a Christ. There is only one Christ for the Jews, and he is not Jesus. And no sex. Yep. You have to suffer. You made Jesus cry, so you must pay. Yeah. So all of these basic things that are supposed to be done in becoming a king, you are denied because you failed your judgment to hearken to the Christ. Because that's why the second tablets were given, in case you didn't know. They built an idol calf god, and in gold, not golden. And yeah, they were having sex orgies. And that's why Moses comes down and sees them and dashes them. I can't remember. Does the Ten Commandments show the actual nudity? I don't think so. Alright. Just checking to see if there's anything more I need to give you on this, because I think we're pretty much done. It's on the 25th of September this year, 24th in the evening at 6 p.m. technically. Yeah, there's the Midrash interpretation. Let's see how accurate they were. Traditionally, Yom Kippur is considered the day on which Moses received the second set of 10 Commandments. It occurred following the completion of the second 40 days of instruction from God. You did watch? No, you didn't watch the I Am That I Am video, did you? At this same time, the Israelites were granted atonement for the sin of the golden calf and the orgy. Hence its designation as the Day of Atonement. And if you don't understand why orgies are bad, it's because whose fruit do you have, women? That's why. Because again, you're counting the fruit. Whose fruit is this? One of 100 guys? Yeah, kind of abominable. As much as you had fun until you got pregnant. And thus the symbolism of women and their bodies. Did you know that? Los Angeles Dodgers outfielder Shawn Green similarly made headlines in 2001 for sitting out a game for the first time in 415 games, then the longest streak among active players on Yom Kippur, even though his team was in the middle of the playoff race. Dodgers rule. And there's Sandy Koufax. Yep. Yeah, living in Southern California, I became attached to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and so I learned about Sandy Koufax and all these guys. So yeah, I was there when Fernando Valenzuela took the mound for the first time and had to have an interpreter there. Yep, and his really wild curveballs. Yep. Hall of Fame pitcher. Yep. Among the greatest. Didn't pitch game 1 because it was on Yom Kippur. Yep. Alrighty. So it's too bad you hate the Jews. You're anti-Semitic, because there's all sorts of fun information if you actually learn the learning of the Jews. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything more to discuss, because Passover is 8 days and is 8 years for the latter days, so Christians replaced it with Passion Week from the Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. So, alrighty, we're done. I don't see anything else. So does that make sense? This is Joseph's. I included that with the Jewish. So I did explain that. Alright, okay, we're done.